10 British inventions that changed the world forever. If you've ever checked a website, mailed a letter, hopped on a train, flown across the ocean, or flicked on a light, you've brushed against British ingenuity, often without noticing. This list is a lively, story-driven countdown of breakthroughs that quietly rewired daily life. 10 British inventions that changed the world forever isn't just a headline. It's a tour of ideas that reshaped industry, health, travel, and how we share information, told in plain English, with just enough colour to keep it fun. Let's jump in, from steam to screens, shall we? 10. The steam engine, Newcomen starts it, what supercharges it? Picture Britain in the early 1700s. Coal mines flooding, pumps failing, and a country hungry for reliable power. In 1712, Thomas Newcomen's atmospheric engine arrived, a towering wheezing machine that used steam to push a piston and haul water from the pits. It was heavy, thirsty for fuel, and yet completely transformative because it turned heat into dependable, repetitive work. Decades later, James Watt's separate condenser made the same idea dramatically more efficient, and his rotary motion upgrades let factories spin shafts and wheels, not just pump water. Suddenly, steam wasn't simply a mine assistant. It was a universal power source for mills, ironworks, and, soon enough, locomotives and ships. Towns grew around this new heartbeat. Work changed from dawn-to-dusk rhythms to scheduled shifts. Output soared as machines did the muscle work. Steam power did not invent ambition, but it gave ambition a motor. It also multiplied every other invention on this list. Once you can order colossal amounts of work at will, you build more, faster. If the modern world has a prologue, it is the thump of a beam engine in a smoky engine house. Proof that a clever idea, refined with patient engineering, can redraw a nation's map and a century's possibilities. Nor did the story end at the factory gates. Steam power went mobile. Paddle steamers beat rivers into timetables. Screw-propelled ships crossed oceans with reliability Sail could not match. Agricultural engines threshed grain and hauled loads, freeing farm labour for new industries. Whole professions, engine drivers, boilermakers, fitters, sprang up to operate and maintain the new heartbeat. The engine house taught generations that energy could be made, stored as pressure, and deployed at will. A mindset we still inhabit whenever we expect a machine to answer a lever with instant strength. 9. Railways and the locomotive, the first true intercity network. With steam muscle available, the next leap was motion. Early railways shuttled coal on wooden or iron tramways, but the 1820s and 1830s turned a mining aid into a national network. The Stockton and Darlington Railway showed that locomotives could haul real loads on public rails. The Liverpool and Manchester Railway perfected the template. Double track, standardised gauge along its route, timetabled services, signals, and all-steam traction. George and Robert Stephenson's locomotives didn't just pull wagons, they pulled towns into each other's orbit. Travel time shrank from days to hours. Costs tumbled, markets widened, and a culture of punctuality took hold because trains won't wait. Railways reorganised geography. Seaside resorts boomed as workers discovered the weekend escape. Fresh food could race inland before it spoiled. Newspapers spread national conversations overnight. Engineers blasted cuttings, threw viaducts across valleys, and stitched regions together with iron. Even today, the language of modern life, connections, timetables, through routes, echoes those first schedules. The railway is more than track and wheels. It is an agreement to meet each other halfway, precisely at 10:43. It taught countries to think in corridors, to plan by minutes, and to believe that distance is negotiable when you lay down the right lines. The ripple effects touch time itself. To keep trains coordinated, towns synchronised clocks to a common railway time. A quiet revolution that smoothed commerce and conversation. Engineering schools standardized methods. Safety systems matured. Tickets democratized travel so a clerk could visit a seaside he'd only read about. And in the arts, railways changed the imaginative map. Novels, paintings and songs began to think in journeys, meetings and departures made possible by steel. 8. Faraday's motor and generator. How we learned to bottle electricity. Michael Faraday was not a gentleman professor with grand titles. He was a relentless experimenter with a notebook and questions. In 1821, he showed that electric current and magnetism could produce continuous rotation. The first, very simple electric motor. 10 years later, he revealed electromagnetic induction. A changing magnetic field can create an electric current. From that seed grew generators, which convert motion into electricity, and transformers, which shape voltage so power can travel long distances safely and efficiently. Motors reversed the flow, electricity into motion, powering trams, workshops, elevators, and, eventually, anything with a plug. The magic is reciprocity. Make electricity here, move it there, do work everywhere. Faraday's discoveries turned electricity from a laboratory curiosity into a practical system. They paved the way for lighting streets, running factories after sunset, and shrinking heavy labour into the press of a switch. If steam was muscle, electricity was nerve, fast, precise, and adaptable. Look around your room. The fans, speakers, hard drives, chargers, and tools are all tiny homages to a demonstration conducted with wire, magnets, and curiosity 2 centuries ago. Crucially, Faraday's insights scaled elegantly. A small generator on a bicycle hub lights a lamp. A massive turbine in a power station lights a city. Motors can be pea-sized for a phone's haptic buzz or giant enough to drive a subway train. Transformers let voltages rise for long-distance transmission and fall for household safety. That flexibility, one set of principles, many sizes, explains why electrification spread so quickly. It didn't require entirely new ideas for each application, just better materials, coils, and control. 7. The penny black. Postage for the people. Before 1840, posting a letter in Britain could be maddeningly expensive and inconsistent, with the recipient often expected to pay. Sir Rowland Hill's reform rewrote the rules. Pay in advance at a low, uniform rate and prove it with a small adhesive stamp. The world's first. The penny black sounded modest, but its effects were anything but. Cheap, predictable postage democratized communication. Families wrote more. Businesses invoiced and advertised farther afield. Newspapers and catalogues travelled on schedule. The post became the bloodstream of a country discovering a national conversation. Standard addresses and reliable deliveries trained people to expect that a message could cross the map and arrive on Tuesday, not vaguely, soon. That confidence grew into habits, ordering goods from afar, maintaining friendships across counties, finding work in new towns. In a very real sense, the penny black is the web's Victorian ancestor. It lowered the cost of reaching out, so people reached further, more often, and with a sense of belonging to something bigger than a single street. Hill's other stroke of genius was administration. Clear rates and standardized procedures turned a patchwork of fees into a service ordinary people could trust. Prepaid stamps meant postmen delivered, not negotiated. Businesses designed forms and envelopes to the new rules. Governments reached citizens directly. Charities fundraised nationally. Even literacy nudged upward when letters became a habit worth cultivating. In a later age, telegraphs and telephones would accelerate the message, but the penny black built the culture. Communication as a right priced for participation. 6. Stainless steel. Rust. Meet your match. Rust is patient. Leave iron in the wrong place and time wins, flakes, stains, and failure. In 1913, Sheffield metallurgist Harry Brearley poured an alloy with enough chromium to form a tenacious, invisible film that resists corrosion. He called it rustless steel. The world settled on stainless. The beauty wasn't just shine, it was hygiene, durability, and safety. Kitchens could be cleaner, hospitals could sterilize instruments without pitting, chemical plants could store reactive substances, and architects could clad buildings in metal that shrugged off rain. From cutlery drawers to railway carriages and surgical wards, stainless steel became the quiet guarantee that tools would last and surfaces would stay sound. It also unlocked designs that ordinary carbon steel couldn't survive, letting engineers think in decades, not seasons. Today, when you see a handrail that looks new after years of fingerprints, or a brewer's tank gleaming after countless cleanings, you're seeing a century-old promise kept, strength without the stain. Stainless also travelled well. On ships, it resisted salt spray. In dairies and breweries, it resisted corrosion and contamination. In cities, it handled pollution without pitting into ugliness. Designers loved that it could be polished to a mirror or brushed to a soft sheen. Surgeons loved that it welcomed sterilization without losing edge or shape. Over time, new grades added heat resistance and toughness, letting jet engines and chemical plants use alloys born of the same idea, ward off decay with a protective skin that heals itself at the atomic level. 5. Radar, seeing with radio. How do you spot what you can't see? In the mid-1930s, British researchers led by Robert Watson Watt demonstrated that bursts of radio waves beamed outward and reflected from distant objects could betray the presence and range of aircraft. The principle sounds simple: transmit, wait, listen for the echo, measure the delay. But the consequences were profound. Link stations created an early warning shield along the coast. Smaller sets went to sea and into the air. After the war, the same technique became a peacetime workhorse. Air traffic controllers watched skies in real time. Ships picked their way through fog without guessing. Meteorologists mapped storms and tracked rainfall as systems formed, moved, and faded. Even modern cars borrow a version of the trick to keep safe distances. Radar gave humanity a new sense, hearing with radio, and with that sense came confidence to fly farther, sail straighter, and plan with knowledge instead of hope. The technology also encouraged a new habit of looking at the world as streams of data. Screens swept in circles, blips marched across gridded maps. Operators learned to filter noise from signal, skills that foreshadowed today's digital dashboards. In weather science especially, radar's gift was immediacy. Instead of waiting for reports, forecasters could watch storms evolve minute by minute, warning communities sooner and guiding pilots and ships around the worst of it. 4. The jet engine. Long distances, short times. Propellers bite the air like paddles in water. Gas turbines gulp it, compress it, ignite it, and hurl it backward to push you forward. Engineer Frank Whittle believed that a compact turbojet could outpace piston engines at high altitude and speed. He patented the idea in 1930, and, a decade later, Britain's first jet aircraft proved the point. The technology matured fast, cleaner, faster, higher. Jetliners turned oceans into overnight inconveniences and stitched continents into commuting distance for business and family alike. Air cargo changed shopping. Tourism changed culture. Aid and expertise could move where needed within hours. The jet engine didn't invent wanderlust, but it satisfied it at scale. Airports became global crossroads. Time zones became scheduling puzzles rather than walls. In the background, gas turbines also drove ships and generated electricity. A reminder that an elegant thermodynamic cycle can be a Swiss Army knife for modern life. And jets redefined more than speed. They normalized long-haul reliability and comfort, lifting flights above most weather and turbulence. Hub-and-spoke networks emerged, pairing small cities to the world through a single connection. Engineers pushed materials and aerodynamics to handle heat and stress at altitude, advances that later helped in power generation and spaceflight. For travellers, the practical change was intimate. Grandparents could visit, students could study abroad, a small business could sell overseas. The world felt suddenly local. 3. Penicillin, the dawn of modern antibiotics. In 1928, Alexander Fleming returned to a petri dish that had grown an unexpected guest, a mould whose halo had killed nearby bacteria. He named the substance penicillin, published the finding, and moved on. A decade later, Howard Florey, Ernst Chain, and colleagues in Oxford chased the clue, turned it into a medicine, and showed that life-threatening infections could yield to a few carefully dosed shots. Mass production followed. The impact is hard to exaggerate. Common wounds stopped becoming death sentences. Surgeons could attempt riskier procedures with far better odds. Mothers and children survived infections that used to ravage families. Antibiotics demand careful stewardship, but their arrival changed expectations. Hospitals became places where intervention often worked, not just places of last resort. Penicillin is a great scientific story, serendipity, teamwork, and perseverance. But more than that, it's a social story about longer lives, healthier recoveries, and second chances. The cultural shift was just as deep. Doctors began to expect recovery where they once braced families for the worst. Public health campaigns took advantage of shorter, contagious periods. Pharmaceutical manufacturing learned to scale delicate biological processes, a skill that later supported many other therapies. For the ordinary person, the change shows up in family stories. A relative who pulled through after an infection that, a generation earlier, might have taken them. Penicillin is science with a human face. 2. The stored program computer, from one-off machines to universal problem solvers. Early electronic computers were built like one-off contraptions. Change the problem, and you often changed the wiring. In 1948, engineers at the University of Manchester ran a short program on a small prototype called the Baby, storing both data and instructions in the same electronic memory. In a stroke, the machine became many machines. Do new work by loading new code, not rebuilding hardware. Cambridge's EDSAC carried the idea into regular service soon after, and the software century began. That architecture, memory holding the instructions that tell the processor what to do, is still what your phone, laptop, and cloud server use. It unlocked a new kind of progress: updates. We could fix bugs, add features, write languages and compilers, and share programs across organizations. Suddenly, the limiting factor wasn't soldering skill, but imagination. From spreadsheets and video editors to search engines and navigation apps, the stored program computer is the invisible stage where today's digital life performs. One way to grasp the change is to imagine writing instructions for a diligent, unimaginative clerk. The clerk doesn't need new hands or eyes to switch tasks, just new instructions. That's the stored program idea. It encouraged teams to share code, to build libraries, and to invent operating systems that juggled many jobs at once. Universities taught programming as a craft. Businesses discovered they could automate bookkeeping, inventory, and design. Eventually, the same architecture shrank onto chips small enough to slip into pockets. A concept became a civilization. 1. The World Wide Web. The world learns to click. The internet existed before the web as a tangle of networks and protocols. What Tim Berners-Lee proposed in 1989 was a simple, universal way to navigate it. Web pages written in HTML, linked by URLs, fetched with HTTP, browsed on any computer. By 1991, the first site was public. In 1993, the core was released freely, and adoption exploded. The web did for information what railways did for distance. It collapsed friction. Anyone could publish, anyone could read, everyone could link. Shoppers found stores without leaving home. Students consulted libraries without whispering. Small creators reached global audiences without a printing press. From tutorials and telemedicine to booking travel and building communities, the web turned curiosity into a journey of clicks. It is the public square, the archive, the market, and the workshop, open all hours. Crucially, the web rewarded linking, acknowledging sources and pointing readers onward. That ethic nurtured search engines, directories, and, later, social platforms. Small businesses gained storefronts without renting high street space. Public services opened forms, maps, and guidance. Museums and archives opened collections to anyone with curiosity. And because the core standards were open, the ecosystem stayed inventive. Browsers improved, developers shipped new tools, and creators everywhere found that a well-told idea could travel the globe overnight. From engines and rails to penicillin, computers, and the web, these ideas rewired how we live, work, travel, and share knowledge. Debate the order if you like. The impact is undeniable. That's why 10 British inventions that changed the world forever remains a story worth telling again and again to everyone. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe and don't forget to turn on the notification bell.